Hello, welcome back to my Women in Motorsport interview series. I am so excited every time I get to do one of these videos, and this is no exception. I've been chatting to Aimee Woods, who is a racing driver and just all around hilarious human being who I had a great time speaking to. We chatted everything from her journey in motorsport so far to what her end goal is, and also about the W Series and what she thinks is going to come of that, and a quick chat about what we think could be done to increase the opportunities for women in motorsport going forward. So check it out and drop a comment on the video to let me know who you'd like me to speak to next. Specifically for people that aren't as aware of like your family and your kind of background in the industry, what's your very first motorsport memory?
I was trying to think about this. There's a few of them. One I have a really vivid memory of is when my dad was building. He went from rallying, so he did a bit of rallying. It was the Northeast Rally Championship, I think it was, and then he switched into circuit racing. And I remember him. I think I was 3, maybe, if that, getting us to sand the inside of his roll cage. So I do remember like being in this like car with no seats and like he had 3, so I have 2 siblings as well. So he was like, "These are small. You used to get in there and sanding down a roll cage." And I was like, "What's this for?" But like I feel like I've said this a million times in different interviews and things, but I was 2 weeks old at my first rally. So it was literally only home from the hospital a few days and we went off, and my mum had 3 kids under the age of 3, I think at the time, or 4 maybe. So 3 of us. Yeah. And she was saying that, we were staying in B&Bs or tents or anything, while Dad was away. So I obviously don't remember that far back, but I do have, Dad had this thing where when he was going down the main straight, the grandstand in Mondello, he would, he'd give me a thumbs up at least once in the race. So I used to just be like intent on waiting for that as well. And then it was great to have, we used to have, eventually we used to stay in tents in the beginning, but we'd be there from Friday until Sunday, and my mum was like incredibly supportive of him. As you can see around the track, the women really, not to make it about gender, but they really do support their partners, and without that it's a really tough gig, just in terms of even sandwich making and making sure everybody's looked after, all of that. But I remember, with my siblings, we used to have rollerblades with us, and we used to love, because the tarmac was really smooth up there as well. So we'd love going down for the weekend, and we really spent half our lives down there in Mondello particularly. It just felt like we were there all the time, and we loved it. Like, we really, really loved it. And there was also loads of other kids that I know now as adults who are racing as well, who we would have known them when we were kids and hung out with them as well. So it's great that it's kind of come around to us now.
Yeah, I love that. The generational, the transition there is really great.
Yeah.
I suppose then, more for your own side of things, your own racing journey, I'd love to hear kind of, how it started and sort of where you are now, and I guess some of the milestones in between. You've gone through like Formula V, you're getting into the Fiesta Z-Check Championship. Would love to hear kind of a bit more about what that experience has been like for you.
Yeah, I think it's like, look, you definitely are at an advantage when you're from a racing family. There's no doubt about it. But I would say, I had Dad tortured for years to get into it, and we just didn't have the money. So when I was in college, of all times to start, I was about 19, I think, and I was working in a shop, and I was like, "Look, if I save up as much as I can I race, whatever?" And he said, "Okay." So Leo Nolte, the commentator in Mondello, the big name in Mondello, he managed to get his hands on a Fiat Uno for me to try out. So I did a bit of testing in it, and I was actually quick straight away in the Uno, and I think I had no fear back then either. I think the more actually you have accidents and things, it can put a bit more fear into you. But back then I was like oblivious, and I was like just hell for leather. I won a race in my first year as well. Now there was only 5 of us in it, but still it was great achievement. And then I kind of went backwards for a while. It feels like I built a Peugeot 205 with my dad when I was 21. So I'd never done a full championship right at that stage. It was just odd races here and there. And then I did the RSA events, the Rally Sport Association, because they were fairly budget, it was €120 for the day, and you got 7 runs. So that was a lot more affordable. So I spent a few years doing that. we were kind of, there was always about, the thing that kind of annoyed me about it, I was in class 4 at the time, and it was like, there was maybe 40 cars in that, so and there were a big difference kind of in they were all the same size engine, but there was a lot of difference. Some of them had diffs, some of them didn't. There was lots of different variations and different cars, so we were always kind of landing in and around 15th or something like that. So it was kind of, that's a bit disheartening as well, when you're always kind of middle of the pack. So I started working in Mondello then as a race instructor, probably that was 2013, I think I started there, which is great because I was just finished college at the time, and I'm a social worker now, but it was great just to get a bit of extra money at the time, and I absolutely loved it. Like, I spent, it's a good drive away from my house here, but I loved it. Like, I'd work as many days a week as I could in it, and the crack was always great as well, and I learned a lot there. And when I was working on the Formula Shane experience, the single seaters, that kind of gave me, I said, I've never driven a single seater, I really want to give that a go. So I did, and it was a big change for me. I'm naturally a saloon driver, and I prefer front wheel drive to rear wheel drive, to be honest with you. So I think I came third in the rookie championship that year. I had some great weekends and then some really crap weekends, and it was very expensive as well. Something breaks on them, I found more than the saloons are kind of easier to run in that way. I felt like there was a lot of kind of, if you were in an accident in the day, it's new this, new that, new whatever all the time. Whereas when you're bumper to bumper on the saloon cars, it's not as bad. It's just a bit of a dent here and there, it's not as difficult to fix. And I kind of was getting the hang of it. And then I had a pretty big, what was that? That was probably, did one championship that year. Then the following year, I was kind of starting to do it again, and then I had a bit of a big enough accident kind of in Bishop's Court. So I said, look, I'm going to give this a bit of a break for a while. I think I did maybe one more race after that because I didn't want to stop straight away after that. But it was not really the fear thing for me, more it was more the expense. I was like, I just literally could not continue to keep fixing things. And it was also kind of like, I find I got into a bit of I think headspace is really important, and the psychology of sports in general is hugely important. And I felt that when you were spending a lot of money, as everybody does, everyone's in the same boat that way, but when it's kind of breaking you a bit and then you're having a disappointing weekend, it gets to a point where you go, do you know what, I've got to give this a little bit of a break. So I did for maybe a year or so. Well, when I say I gave it a break, I probably still went out at least once that year. Do you know, that sort of way, that is a break for me. And then I went out in the Fiesta Z-Tex, and I was actually so happy to get back to a saloon car. I was like, oh, I love this, man. Yeah. I qualified 5th the first time I was out in one, and I was like, that was such a good feeling. I was like, okay, so I'm not terrible. You can really get into your head. Last weekend was a horrendous weekend that has really got into my head as well, but we'll come back stronger. But so I did an odd few races that year. It was my dad's car as well, so I kind of just stole it from him, and he was running it, and it was brilliant. It was really good, and we've been doing relatively well in the Fiestas so far. Got our first podium last year in October in the last round in the Fiesta, so I was delighted with that now. My dad has motor neuron disease, unfortunately, so it's a terminal illness, and he's kind of he's struggling a lot. He's not mobile anymore, but it's a very different year for me doing the setup as much as I can myself, and Emma Dempsey's given me a hand with that, and Mickey Larkin, who's my dad's best bud, and his daughter Sabrina. So we're kind of like a little female run team, an honorary Mickey in there as well. Yeah. But it's been, this has been a really big kind of learning curve for me. There's a lot to think about, even towing your own trailer and stuff. Like, I'd never done that before, so getting all even insurance and stuff, everything sorted out for having the truck going or whatever, all of that has been a big undertaking. And again, I used to wonder why Dad was always in bad form, and now I realise because there's so much to think about and worry about, and have I got this, have I got that, and it's very different from just driving. So I'm trying to get a grasp on that at the moment. So that's kind of a rundown so far of what we've been up to.
And you kind of mentioned, you know, working with other females who are kind of in and around motorsport, but in 2018 you're actually part of the first ever all-female Irish endurance team that raced at Mondello. I'd love to kind of know what that was like. It seemed, you know, even reading back about it now, you can kind of still feel like the buzz that was around it. It seemed to be a really exciting time. I'd love to just hear a bit more about how that was from your point of view, being actually part of the team.
Yeah, it was pure crack. That is it was Nicola Watkins, Emma Dempsey, Ruth Nugent and myself. It was Emma Dempsey who came up with the idea of it, and she approached me. I would have known Emma when I was a kid, but I wouldn't have hung out with her in years. She was in the UK for a while. So she approached me and said, do you want to be part of it? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? Like, you know. So we kind of put the plans in motion. It was a lot of organisation went into it. And Nicola Watkins has a lovely house in Drogheda there, and we used to have that as our meet up. So we'd go down on Friday night, a few bottles of wine, strategizing. And we had it was great fun. There was a lot of crack and a lot of laughs as well. Though I think it was amazing to get such good media coverage about it as well. We had no idea that people were going to be that interested. Well, I certainly didn't anyway. I actually, weirdly enough, I kind of prefer when you're out of public eye. I actually kind of just, I know that probably sounds silly saying this while I'm doing an interview, but it's like, it's kind of, I feel it. I do feel pressure then, you know, and I kind of prefer to just be behind the scenes, kind of in your own head. I think, you know, it does make a difference having that kind of level of attention on you, because you're like, you feel like you can't put a foot wrong, really. I certainly found that pressure. It was good. I didn't race well that day, which annoyed me. And I had a good season that year, you know. Well, it wasn't terrible, you know, but I didn't feel I did as well as I could have done. But in terms of team dynamics, it was great. It was really good, and everyone got on really well. Like, we still all have great crack about it and still all meet up regularly, you know. And then Emma and Nicola did it again the following year together. I just didn't have the time that year to do it. Very time consuming for anybody thinking about doing the 6 hour. There's a lot of things that have to go into it in terms of like, but some people put a lot of, we certainly put a lot of time into trying to figure out what our strategy was, or getting practice in, getting used to a different, because we didn't use my car, it was a different car, so getting used to a different car even. And just figuring out the logistics of the day. It's a really long day. I don't know how people do the 24-hour ones. I think I would be absolutely wrecked after that. But you definitely were fit for bed by the end of it. It was a long day. It was a long day. And when the weather wasn't great either. It was quite wet that day, so it was a bit. Now we actually were doing quite well. I think the good thing that worked with our team is everybody was very consistent. So we didn't have any major, like, there was no accidents, there was no nothing major anyway. Nothing went particularly wrong, except then we had, I think it was the headlight went out, or there was an electrical issue anyway, and that took us like 20 minutes to fix. So that was like, oh, well, we finished it, which is a big achievement. But at the same time, it would have been lovely if that didn't happen, because we would have definitely been a lot further up than we were. But great experience, highly recommend it. And it was, I had to laugh at I remember we were on the news or whatever, which was enormous. It was like, well, what the hell is going on? But I remember seeing RTE posting it on their Facebook page. And there was like hundreds of comments underneath. They've been like, they'd all have fallen out over a hairbrush after 5 minutes, and this kind of like commentary about it, which is like, oh, for God's sake, like, you know, you expect it really. But yeah, there was a lot of that. There was kind of a lot of people making snarky comments and stuff, but it can be a bit of crack too, you know. But in the end of it, like, you know, definitely proved them wrong anyway.
100%. Yeah, that kind of segues well into, you know, I've named the interview series Women in Motorsport, obviously for a reason. And, you know, I think there's a bunch of different ways that we can do more to help women, and I think also younger girls at the ages where they're kind of wondering about careers, get into the industry. But where do you think there's kind of opportunities for us to create a bit more space there from what you've seen?
I think like what you're doing is amazing for a start. I think, you know, Emma set up the Women in Motorsport Ireland Facebook page. It's run by Hannah as well now. She's doing a great job there. I think visibility is a huge one. I suppose really, I have varying views on it, because a few years ago, like when I was doing the stuff for Wheels for Women and that, writing a blog about it, I wouldn't do that now, because I actually find it's too much as a driver. I think you need to be more focused just on your selfishly kind of on yourself and what you're doing. And I think sometimes that can not take away from it a little bit, but it can make it feel, I suppose I don't like to think of myself as a female in motorsport. I'm just a driver, you know, that kind of way. And that's something that's important to me, because I feel like othering yourself is just, why? Even though, yes, there have been challenges in the past or whatever, I don't really have those anymore. Like I'm in this a long time. People just accept I'm there. Do you know what I mean? There can be sometimes, I have seen people kind of say, you got beat by a girl and stuff like that, whatever. And I'm just like, oh, for God's sake. But it's actually just, a lot of the time it can be harmless fun. Do you know, that sort of way? You know, I think you have to take things with a pinch of salt as well. I think the one for sure is the visibility. So I do feel like having other women, not just drivers, you know, so like Emma is helping me run the car this year as well, and you doing this series as well, like things like that are really important, you know, where it's not just the drivers advocating for themselves all the time, it's other people showing interest and showing support, you know. I think that's probably the biggest thing to make a difference. Every woman in motorsport that I know is so proactive and helpful. When anybody asks them any questions, they're always really friendly and really I suppose accessible, you know, to trying to help people out or give advice. So I think that, you know, once that continues, we should see a few more coming into it. Formula Woman, I see, you know, other, you know, people have gotten into the sport since then as well. It gives people a route to get into it. But I do think there's this kind of barrier around racing in general, which is financial mostly. But I think a lot of people are like, I have no idea where to start. And that applies for men and for women. But I think men can be just a little bit ballsier about it and just say, I'm going to do it, you know. So I think it's more attitude as well. I think women should have more belief in themselves, more confidence, and just go for it.
Yeah. And I've kind of been looking at the W Series a lot lately, because obviously a couple of things have kind of changed about that now, and they just had their inaugural races in Miami last weekend. What do you think about the format there in terms of, you know, it calls itself a Formula One feeder, but as such, we haven't really seen anyone kind of take the step into like F3 or F2, never mind Formula One yet. And I know it's only been around for a couple of years, but what do you think about how they've kind of gone about structuring, the way they've kind of gone about structuring it? And do you think that it will eventually produce a female F1 driver?
I do, for sure. I think I don't think they're going to fail in that. That has to happen. It's going to happen. Do you know what I mean? I feel sorry for whoever that Formula One driver is, because it's going to be so much pressure on them. Yes. I hope, like, I mean, there's pressure on all of them as Formula One drivers anyway. But yeah, no, I mean, look, it's blatant as anything that needs to happen sooner rather than later. I think I was very against the W Series when I heard about it initially, but then I was like, maybe it is a good thing. And a lot of people were skeptical that it was going to be successful. We went over for a weekend and met with Alice Powell and Sarah Moore. They're now good friends of ours, Sarah particularly. We have a WhatsApp group where we talk most days about, you know, all things racing. And we can see how, I guess what I think is really interesting is when you kind of remove gender, it doesn't come up anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like it just becomes racing. Yeah. And that's really cool to see. And like, I really enjoy watching it. Last weekend was a bit nuts, and it was kind of like, oh dear. Yeah. Oh dear. But you know, there are young drivers out there like 16 who come from karts and that, so that you've got to take that with a pinch of salt. But like, that's, you know, been broadcast on Sky F1, like, yeah, God, like that's psychologically the pressure. I've been speaking about that a little bit, but I think that's something that needs to be acknowledged. Like, what that must feel like to be some of those young girls who've never had that level of attention before. It's got to be enormous. I think it's a great series. I really enjoy watching it. I have no doubt it's going to produce a Formula One driver, because I think that's why F1 has taken it under its wing, really, you know. And I think that's probably why they're having the academy drivers now. I think it's still got a little bit of work to do. Like, I mean, in the beginning, there was no teams in the beginning. Everyone just swapped cars and all of that, which doesn't make sense. Like, you should have a team and you should be able to have a relationship with your engineers and all of that, and in terms of feedback and, you know, knowing your own car and things like that. So I can understand it in terms of fairness, but like every other Formula Series isn't like that, you know. So I do think it's better that they have the teams now, and I guess it's going to become a little bit more political though as well, as we see in the F1 moving forward. But I'm looking forward to kind of watching what happens. I'd actually love, like, if there was a female racing driver, I'd love if it wasn't just one, like went into Formula One on their own. I think that might be a bit easier. Like, I mean, I hope it's not just we'll have one token ship for a while and then it'll be grand, you know. But I do, and I think Formula One drivers like would have no problem with it either. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I hope it's not for the sake of it either. Like, I mean, if you're watching it and someone's getting lapped every round, it needs to go. Do you know what I mean? And that's the same for every racing driver, you know, whether male or female. So hopefully that won't be the case. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens for sure. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I 100% agree on not having, you know, one poor soul sort of catapulted into that lion's den. I think it would be, you know, regardless of actually like getting yourself into the car and performing at the weekend mentally, that's going to be so draining. You know, I think, you know, you're human. There's no way you're going to be able to shut out that level of expectation. So 100% with you on that.
I get the impression Jamie Chadwick would be able for it though.
I do think, yeah, and I think in a way there's like a little pod of them there. You know, you have like Maya Wug, who's in the Ferrari Driver Academy, you know, you have a couple of others, and obviously Susie Wolff has been doing a bunch of mentoring as well, you know, with a couple of those girls. And I think you can definitely see like the few that have the mental toughness, I think, to do it. And interestingly, a lot of them make the same point that you did at the beginning, that when you remove gender, it stops being the conversation and it just becomes about your performance as a driver, which is exactly what like the goal is essentially. Sure. I suppose speaking of goals, you know, you kind of mentioned like much prefer the saloons to the single seaters. What's kind of your goal essentially for your career in motorsport? You know, you mentioned that you also have your kind of day job as well. So I'd love to know like what your sort of end goal is for the sport.
I think, weirdly enough, I'd like to give single seaters a shout again. Yeah, I would. That's the thing. I would. I want to go back and do a better job this time.
Yeah.
I think for me, I suppose the goal is for me to always be involved in motorsport in some way, shape, or form. I've seen so many women throughout the years. My dad had racing teams. You know, he ran racing cars. Excuse me, and. Seen loads he actually had quite a few women that he ran, and so it wasn't weird for me growing up. That's what I saw, so yeah. You know, it was kind of normal. But they were really good, a lot of them, and then they ducked out though after X amount of years or whatever. And I think like you have to be realistic. There's the whole thing of women have children sometimes. Well, some women have children, and that is going to take you out of it for a certain period of time, and that's just a reality. So for me, it's kind of that, like, when I, you know, whether I go away from racing at any point, whether that's like we're doing work in the house at the minute or whatever. I got married last year in was it last? When was that? 2020.
Nearly 2 years now already.
But that, like, I mean, thankfully, well, not thankfully, COVID was around, but there wasn't anything to be done that year. But like financially, I just couldn't afford it. You know, like you're trying to plan a wedding as well. So that was like, that was kind of, yeah, things are going to come up in life where it's not going to be your priority. But I really hope that I'm never away from it for too long, or I always make a return. And, you know, I like to think that when I'm 50 odd, you know, I'll still be racing, and like many people are, you know, and I like to think that that's my goal now. Like, I mean, I'm kind of a bit old to think about a career professionally in any way, and I think it's hard to figure out what that would look like anyway. But just to always kind of have it in my life is a big thing.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I have a 5-round finisher that I do with everyone, so we will get into that. I want to start off by knowing, and this could be saloon or single seater, whichever you think, what's your dream racetrack or like location that you would absolutely just love to race at?
I think Monza would be a big one because I've been there twice and I absolutely adored it. Amazing. Or Spa. I think is, you know, it's iconic, and I think one of those. But I mean, any of them really.
Brilliant. Okay, so my next question was, who do you think will win the F1 driver championship this year?
Charles Leclerc, I hope.
Okay, nice.
I'm rooting for him this year for sure.
Sure. Do you prefer traveling or do you prefer staying at home?
I like both. I think it's good to have a balance. I love being away from home, but I love coming back as well.
Yeah.
So it's I like to be kind of balanced. I don't think I could live away from home. I don't think I could live away from Ireland really. I think I'd always probably want to come back, you know.
Who would you say is your most inspiring woman in motorsport? It could be past or present.
This is such a tricky one. I think you know, you got Rosemary Smith and Michelle Mouton and rallying or whatever, so you definitely they're like trailblazers. But this is so cheesy, but I think for me it's all the women that I grew up watching, like on my dad's team, and my cousin Pamela did it, and there was Michelle Graham, Jenny McGreal, all those women, and I loved having those around when I was a kid. And then I have to say Sarah Moore as well for in the W series. Otherwise, I think I'd get in trouble if I didn't say that.
Fair, that's a good call. I asked this question of all of my guests because I just love hearing the answer. But if you could be any cartoon character from your childhood for a day, who would you pick and why?
Oh, that is such a tricky one. Why does Cruella de Vil come into my head? Because I have a combination, but I don't want to murder puppies. But she does drive like a maniac, so we have that in common.
Style, to be fair.
I think I'd have to go with that, or maybe I'll be Purdy the dog, actually, because I think, you know, being a dog for a day would be pretty cool.
I know, I guess.
My dog is called Purdy as well, so I'm like,
that's so
yeah.
I love that. You could be
surprised I haven't mentioned her about 17,000 times already.
No, that's actually a great call. I would love to just like hang out with my dog for a day and
honestly, literally, it would be the best crack ever. Just like lying on the couch and not having any responsibilities for the day.
Yeah, just have someone feeding you, looking after you. Yeah, 100%. Brilliant. Look, Aimee, it's been absolutely fab talking to you. Thank you so much for taking the time, and best of luck with everything you're getting up to this year.
Thank you so much, and thanks a million for having me. Really, really good crack. Nice way to spend the evening.